Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Part 14, Phi Simulation and Digital Twins, the Mirror World. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, Phi, the Holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When Phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them, the three dimensions show themselves at once. Time as omega, space as k, and motion as v, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and a motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. We stand at the peak of measurement engineering. We have built the eyes, calibrated them to a shared standard, and learned to see the verbs and knots of phi. Now, we perform the ultimate synthesis. We bring all these skills together to create a living mirror of reality. We learn to build a digital twin, a phi-native software model of a physical system calibrated against HLS data that can predict, explore, and, most importantly, safely fail before we ever touch the real world. This is the skill of the simulator. You're entering the predictive modeling chamber. Walls of servers hum softly. On the central display, a virtual reality unfolds, not of fantasy, but of a perfectly mirrored physics governed by the grammar of phi. Your job is to tune this mirror until it reflects truth, and then to treat it as the sacred sandbox where all future engineering is first born. Scene: the virtual wind tunnel. Imagine you are an aerospace engineer in the early 20th century. You have a radical new wing design. You could build it, mount it on a plane, and hope it doesn't tear apart in flight. Or you could build a scale model and test it in a wind tunnel. The wind tunnel is a controlled, instrumented simulation of flight. It lets you discover stall conditions, flutter resonances, and vortices before you risk lives and machinery. The digital twin is our phi wind tunnel, but it is infinitely more powerful. It doesn't simulate airflow with approximate equations. It simulates the fundamental phi field from which airflow emerges. Consider a real-world system: water flowing past a cylindrical pillar in a channel. At a certain speed, the flow doesn't just slip past smoothly. It sheds alternating vortices in a beautiful, rhythmic pattern called the von Karman vortex street. This is a classic example of a coherent, self-organizing clause in the fluid's phi field, where phi might represent stream function or vorticity. Our puzzle is this: how do we build a software model that starts from the phi grammar, is fed HLS-calibrated data of the initial conditions, and then predicts the emergence, frequency, and stability of this vortex street? And how do we know when to trust its predictions? The core mechanism: phi-native solvers. We don't simulate molecules or grid cells. We simulate phi. We write down the constraint clauses that govern the system's phi field, derived from episode 9. For an incompressible viscous fluid, the governing equation for the vorticity, a derivative of phi, is the Navier-Stokes equation. In our phi language, this is a specific, nonlinear constraint between the derivatives of phi. A phi-native solver is a computational algorithm that takes an initial phi of xy map and evolves it forward in time according to these constraint equations. It respects the grammar. It uses numerical techniques to ensure that conserved quantities, like the total action or the topological charge in the domain, are preserved within numerical error. It's a physics engine, but for the primordial field itself. Building the twin involves three layers. 1. The physics core, the phi solver implementing the constraint clauses. 2. The calibration layer, a set of adjustable parameters like viscosity, density, driving force that are not fundamental but specific to the material and conditions. 3. The observation layer, virtual sensors that output simulated data in exactly the same HLS format as our real sensors would, allowing direct comparison. The coherence criterion, dynamic mirroring. This leads to our central coherence criterion for a valid twin. A valid twin must be dynamically coherent with its physical counterpart. Its simulated phi field must evolve under the same constraint clauses and conserve the same quantities, action, topology, as the real system within measurement error. The twin isn't just trying to match the final video of the vortex street. It must get the physics right. The vortices must appear for the right reason, a hydrodynamic instability, at the right frequency, the Struhal number, and must conserve vorticity. If the real system conserves topological charge, net vorticity, the twin must too. If the real system dissipates energy through viscosity at a certain rate, the twin simulated phi field must lose intensity of change at that same rate. This is dynamic coherence. The mirror world doesn't just look like ours, it behaves like ours for the same underlying reasons. The peril of the fudge factor, dissonance in the model. Now, the great temptation and the primary dissonance indicator. When we try to calibrate our twin to match experimental data, it might fail. The predicted vortex street might be too weak or the frequency off by 20%. The easy way out is to add an ad hoc, non-physical fix. Maybe we add an arbitrary damping term. Maybe we inject ungrounded noise to kick the instability. Maybe we tweak a parameter far beyond any physically plausible range. A twin that requires such fixes to match reality is incoherent. Its grammar is wrong. It is not a mirror. It is a distorted funhouse reflection that we've manually bent to match a single snapshot. It will fail catastrophically when asked to predict anything outside that specific calibration point. The true path is harder. Discrepancy analysis. We run the twin. We compare its output to HLS data. We don't just look at the difference. We analyze the structure of the error. Is the error smooth? Does it have a spatial pattern, a temporal rhythm? Structured error is a gift. It points directly to a missing clause in our model. Perhaps we neglected thermal gradients. Perhaps we need to include a higher-order derivative term. We go back to episode 9 style thinking, hypothesize a new constraint, implement it in the twin, and test again. The coherence budget for simulation. Before we trust the twin, we must assess its coherence budget. This budget determines if our mirror is clear enough to see by. 1. Numerical fidelity budget. Computers approximate. They discretize space and time. Our grid spacing, delta x, delta y, delta t, must be fine enough to resolve the smallest relevant features, like vortex cores, and the fastest relevant frequencies. Our budget rule: the numerical error from discretization must be significantly smaller than the experimental uncertainty we're trying to beat. 2. Parameter knowledge budget. We can't simulate everything from first principles. We have material parameters, viscosity, diffusion constants. How well do we know them? Our budget rule: the uncertainty in our input parameters must propagate to a predictive uncertainty in the twin that is smaller than the effect we want to predict. If we want to predict a 10% change in vortex frequency, our parameter uncertainty must cause less than, say, 1% variation in the prediction. 3. Computational power budget. High-fidelity phi simulation can be immensely demanding. Our budget rule: we must have the computational resources to run the simulation within a useful time frame and to run it many times for calibration and uncertainty quantification. If our budget is insufficient, if our grid is too coarse, our parameters are guesses, or we can't afford to run the simulation, our twin is not a reliable tool. We must increase the budget or reduce our ambitions, simplify the model, target a coarser prediction. Calibration, tuning the mirror. Calibration is the process of adjusting the twin's parameters, not its physics, to align it with HLS-calibrated data from the real system. We use sophisticated algorithms like Bayesian inference or gradient descent. We run the twin with a proposed set of parameters. It produces a predicted time series of phi. We compare this to the measured HLS phi data. We compute a likelihood. How probable is the observed data given these parameters? The algorithm searches the parameter space for the set that maximizes this likelihood. Crucially, it doesn't find a single best value. It produces a probability distribution over parameters, which translates into a predictive uncertainty distribution for future runs. This is how the twin learns the accent of the specific physical instance it's mirroring. The safety rail, the licensed window, and predictive uncertainty. Our safety rail for twins is twofold. 1. The simulation licensed window. Just like a sensor, every twin has a domain of validity. This window is defined by the range of the calibration data. If we calibrated our fluid twin for flow speeds between 1 and 3 meters per second, its predictions are licensed only within that range. Trying to predict behavior at 10 meters per second is extrapolation and is prohibited. The twin must explicitly state its licensed window. 2. Predictive uncertainty reporting. The twin must never output a single crisp prediction. It must output a prediction with error bars. These error bars incorporate parameter uncertainty, numerical error, and the inherent sensitivity of the system. When extrapolating near the edge of its licensed window, these error bars must grow dramatically, signaling dropping confidence. No real-world intervention should be attempted without first passing twin simulation. And passing means the twin predicts success with high confidence, small error bars, within its licensed window. If the twin's prediction has huge uncertainty or predicts failure, we stop. We do not proceed to the physical foundry. If coherence breaks, we stop. If coherence returns, we continue. If the twin cannot achieve a confident, dynamically coherent match to calibration data, we are not permitted to use it for engineering. We must improve the model, get better data, or accept that the system is beyond our current ability to simulate. The prediction spine, the hallmarks of a good twin. A well-built and calibrated twin yields a powerful prediction spine. 1. Converging error. As the twin is refined, better physics, better calibration data, its out-of-sample prediction error, its performance on novel experiments it wasn't calibrated on, will systematically decrease. This is the true test of understanding, not just curve fitting. 2. White noise residuals. After full calibration, the residuals, differences between twin and experiment, should be consistent with white noise. They should have no spatial or temporal structure. If the residuals show patterns, for example, always underestimating vortex strength in the wake, that's a clue, a structured error pointing to missing physics. 3. Failure mode prediction. The twin will correctly predict instabilities, resonances, and failure modes before they occur in the lab. It will show the vortex street becoming chaotic above a certain Reynolds number. It will reveal resonant frequencies where small driving forces produce large destructive oscillations. This is its most valuable gift, foresight. Falsifiability, when the mirror cracks. Our falsifiability threads test the limits of the entire phi paradigm as an engineering tool. Falsifier 1. If, despite exhaustive effort, a twin cannot be calibrated to match a simple, well-measured system within its error bars, the phi closure hypothesis fails for that system. It means the real dynamics involve more degrees of freedom or different principles than can be captured by a single phi field and its derivative constraints. The holophase picture is incomplete for that domain. If a twin's predictions are consistently less accurate than a simple phenomenological model, a curve fit with no physics, then the phi-based approach adds no practical value for that domain. The beautiful theory doesn't translate into superior engineering. We'd be better off with empirical approximations. This would force a ruthless pragmatism onto the field. These falsifiers ensure that digital twins remain tools of truth, not articles of faith. The tri-unity of simulation. A twin embodies tri-unity in its architecture. Time echo, integration. The solver evolves phi forward in time, respecting causal structure. Its temporal fidelity determines if it captures rhythms, omega, correctly. Space echo, discretization. The computational grid defines its spatial resolution. It must be fine enough to capture textures and singularities, defects. The coupled time-space evolution produces the emergent motion, flows, propagations, drifts that we compare to reality. A miscalibration in one echo corrupts the others. An error in the time step can distort simulated velocities. A two-coarse spatial grid can smear out vortices, affecting their predicted motion. Lanterns across scales, the universal sandbox. The digital twin concept revolutionizes every field of design and discovery. Near scale, instead of synthesizing millions of chemical compounds to test against a protein, build a molecular twin. Simulate the phi field of electron orbitals, the molecular wave function. Simulate the protein's phi field. Let them interact in the mirror world. Screen for binding affinity virtually. This drastically accelerates discovery and reduces animal testing. Create a city twin. The phi field could represent information flow, traffic density, or energy use. Calibrate it with real sensor data. Test new traffic light algorithms, evacuation plans, or infrastructure changes in the twin before implementing them. Predict how a new building affects wind patterns and pollution dispersion. Far scale, Existing climate models are massive simulations of fluid dynamics, chemistry, and biology. A planetary twin built on phi principles would unify these phenomena in a single ontological language. The challenge of calibration would be astronomical, but the potential for understanding complex couplings between ocean phases, atmospheric waves, and ecological rhythms would be transformative. In each case, the twin is a safe space to ask, what if, without paying the real-world price for failure. The ethics of simulation, the responsibility of the sandbox. This brings us to a profound ethical dimension, the duty of the simulator. A twin is not a game. Its predictions can guide decisions that affect lives, ecosystems, and economies. Therefore, transparency and limitations. The licensed window and predictive uncertainty must be prominently displayed and communicated, not buried in technical appendices. Users must know the boundaries of trust. Guard against simulation myopia. The greatest danger is falling in love with the elegance of the mirror world and forgetting it is a model. We must constantly test against reality. The twin is a guide, not an oracle. Consent by proxy. When a twin is used to design a social or biological intervention, for example, a new public space, a therapeutic protocol, whose reality is being mirrored? Is the calibration data representative? The ethical burden is to ensure the twin reflects the diversity and complexity of the stakeholders, not just the preferences of the modeler. Power without coherence is self-destruction. And coherence in simulation demands ruthless honesty about the map's relationship to the territory. A measurement scene, the von Karman vortex street. Let's enact our roadmap's measurement scene. Scene, building a twin of water flow past a cylinder. What we measure: HLS-calibrated phi x, y, t data from a real water channel experiment at a specific flow velocity. We use this for calibration. We also have data at different velocities for validation. We build our phi solver, for example, a Navier-Stokes solver in vorticity stream function formulation. We calibrate its viscosity parameter against the first dataset. The calibrated twin, when run, spontaneously generates a stable, alternating vortex street. The Strohal number, the non-dimensional oscillation frequency, matches the experimental value within the twin's predictive uncertainty. When we change the inflow velocity parameter in the twin within the licensed window, the predicted change in Strohal number matches the trend seen in the held-out validation data. The residuals between twin and experiment are small and look like random sensor noise. The twin produces steady laminar flow with no vortices. Or it produces vortices that immediately dissolve into chaos. No adjustment of the physical viscosity parameter can make it match the clean periodic shedding seen in the lab. This indicates the model is missing a key physics clause. Perhaps it neglects three-dimensional effects, or the inflow boundary conditions are wrong. The model is fundamentally incoherent with the observed dynamics. The recognition skill, seeing the need for a twin. You know you need this skill when you have a design or an intervention in mind, and the cost of being wrong is high. When you think, I wish I could try this out first without breaking anything, you are in the domain of the digital twin. If you find yourself about to run a complex, expensive, or risky experiment, and a voice in your head says, shouldn't we simulate this first? That is the voice of the simulator's discipline. The digital twin of the digital twin, meta-calibration. Our ultimate tool is recursive. We use a twin to help us build better twins. We have a twin building twin. This meta-simulator explores the space of possible model clauses and parameters, predicting which combinations will best match a given calibration dataset. It helps us automate discrepancy analysis and model selection. It is the beginning of AI-assisted physics discovery, a precursor to 10.5.5. Enabling the future, the core tool of civilization. The roadmap states it unequivocally. Enables next, everything. The twin is the core tool for programming, 10.3, engineering, 10.4, and safe testing, 10.4.5, 10.8.2. This skill is the linchpin. It depends on the closed library, 10.1.2, for its physics, on all measurement and calibration skills, 10.2.1, 10.2.4, for its data, and on the validation mindset, 10.1.4. You write a phi program. Where do you debug it? In the twin. The twin is the compiler's test environment. Before you sculpt a field or create a defect in a physical foundry, you design and test the process in the twin. The phi ecology simulator for testing patches is a specialized twin. The containment protocols are validated in twin simulations. The twin is the protective barrier between human intention and physical consequence. It is where we earn the right to act. Zenodo and the equations of the mirror. If you want to see the full mathematical derivations and exact equations behind this idea, you can search for Holophase on Zenodo. There, you will find the scientific papers that this audio journey is built on. The papers detail the phi-native numerical solvers, spectral methods, finite difference schemes for phase field equations, the Bayesian calibration frameworks, Markov chain Monte Carlo, variational inference, and the formal methods for quantifying predictive uncertainty, ensemble forecasting, polynomial chaos expansion. They provide the rigorous computational mathematics that turns our philosophical mirror into a working engineering instrument. Return to the phi. Let us zoom out. We have completed book 10.2. We began with building a single eye to see phi. We end with building a complete predictive mirror of a phi system. We have moved from perception to anticipation. We remember, there is only one field. The digital twin is a pattern of information, itself a kind of phi structure in the computational substrate, that models the behavior of other phi structures in the physical substrate. It is the universe, through us, building a simplified model of itself. We have added the supreme engineering discipline, the refusal to act without first passing through the mirror world. We have institutionalized foresight. We have made the sandbox a mandatory stop on the road to reality. This is the foundation of responsible power. Not to act first and ask questions later, but to simulate, predict, validate, and only then, with measured confidence, to engage. So, picture yourself in the predictive modeling chamber. On the main display, the digital twin of the water channel runs. The virtual cylinder sits in a stream of simulated phi. As you watch, instability forms. A vortex detaches from the top shoulder, then one from the bottom, in a perfect, rhythmic dance. A sidebar displays the live comparison to the HLS data. Strohal number, predicted 0.198, measured 0.200. Residual RMS, 0.005 rad. The error is noise. The mirror is clean. You have just learned to build a world in a box, a reality in a loop, a twin that breathes the same phase as its sibling. This is part 10.2.5, phi simulation and digital twins, the mirror world. It is the culmination of book 10.2, measurement engineering, and the most important tool we will ever wield. In our next session, we leave the workshop of measurement. We enter the forge of creation. We begin book 10.3, phi programming. We will learn to write intentions in the phi language, to compile them into instructions, and to use our hard-won measurement and simulation skills to debug our designs against the unforgiving standard of reality. We will learn to speak commands that the universe can understand and obey. Remember, one field, phi, with its infinite echoes in time, space, and motion. We can now not only see it and predict it, but we have built a sanctuary where we can practice shaping it. Our conversation with reality is about to become a dialogue. Salam and peace be upon you.